Welcome to our presentation on requirements elicitation technique, and our chosen technique is interviews. My name is Tyson Thornton, and my partner is Brig Francois.
What is an interview? An interview is a common form of elicitation where information is verbally communicated between two or more people. The person conducting the interview asks questions to elicit information from the person or people being interviewed. This can occur in many different settings, but is often done face-to-face. The effectiveness of these interactions depends greatly on the quality of the questions that are asked. Depending on the type of information you are eliciting, there are three different types of interviews that you can conduct: structured, unstructured, or semi-structured. In a structured interview, the interviewer comes prepared to ask specific questions. They have pre-planned the direction of the interview and are looking to gather specific information from the interviewee. This ensures that the topics they plan to discuss will be covered during the interview. An unstructured interview takes a more conversational approach. The interviewer is not strict on guiding the flow of the conversation and does not follow a predetermined list of questions. A semi-structured interview is a blend of the structured and unstructured interview. The interviewer may come prepared with some questions or with an idea as to where the conversation will go, but will change course as needed. It is the job of the interviewer to determine which approach is best suited for eliciting the desired information.
Having a successful interview depends on a variety of factors. Most of it depends on the person giving the interview. Does that person have a good understanding of the focus domain? How experienced is that person at conducting interviews and documenting them? Knowing what the right questions are and when to ask them is very important. The type of interview chosen can add to the probability of success in the interview. For example, if the interviewer has a limited understanding of the domain and is trying to learn more, then choosing an unstructured interview format would allow for the interviewee to control the direction of the interview and provide any information they feel the interviewer would find helpful or relevant. The success that is generated from the interviewee has to do with how capable that person is in providing relevant information and how informed that person is as to what the goals and desired outcomes are for the interview. This can be controlled through the decision process when choosing which people will be included in the interview. Spending a lot of effort and time on preparation for the interview will greatly increase the chances for a successful interview. An interview can be broken down into three main processes: preparing, conducting, and review. As part of the preparation to the interview, the person conducting the interview should clearly identify and define the focus and goals for the interview. Next, potential interviewees need to be identified, considering those that have an in-depth knowledge of the domain and what their potential stake is with the project. After that, the focus would be on designing the interview. Oftentimes, the interview needs to be custom designed for each interviewee in order to increase the probability of the desired outcome of the interview. The format of the interview is chosen, which would be structured, unstructured, or semi-structured. Next, questions are carefully organized, and it's decided whether or not a scribe is needed. The interviewer then reaches out to potential interviewees and schedules the interviews. When conducting an interview, it should be open with an introduction clearly stating the purpose and addressing any questions or concerns of the interviewee. During the interview, the person conducting the interview should stay focused on the selected format and design. Any concerns brought up by the interviewee can either be addressed quickly or need to be documented and followed up with later. After the interview, all of the collected information needs to be organized and then sent to the interviewee to review and confirm accuracy. There are some clear advantages with using the interview technique. The information collected normally is very detailed and is very useful because typically the interview is done with a stakeholder, so it allows for the collection of rich user data. The information collected from the interview could also be used to design a survey to reach more stakeholders, which helps to overcome one of the downsides of interviews not being able to reach a large audience. Conducting an interview also allows for the person conducting the interview to gain a greater perspective of the entire system instead of just targeting one specific part and gathering information on only that. Proper research and preparation prior to the interview will also add to the overall knowledge and expertise of the interviewer, which comes from successful interviews.
While the interview is one of the most commonly used elicitation techniques, there are some obvious downsides to using it. How we interpret what others say is subjective. When conducting an interview, we need to be cautious of how individual interpretation or bias can alter the data. How a question is presented may also yield varying results. If an interview is too structured, we may be limited on the quality of responses we receive. If it is too loosely planned, we may not get sufficient information or stay on topic. It is important that the interviewer comes prepared with a specific interview method in mind. Interviewing can also be a time-consuming endeavor. You must consider the time it would take to plan for an interview, to meet with the interviewee, and then to interpret the data. Because of this, it is also difficult to gather information from large samples of people using the interview technique. When should you use the interview technique? If you are beginning a project, an interview is a great place to start with the data collection process. By asking stakeholders critical questions, you are able to gather information that will lay the groundwork for the rest of your research. This is also effective if you are looking to gather a large amount of data. However, if you are pressed for time or looking solely to gather quantitative data in order to eliminate interpretation, an interview may not be the best choice for requirements elicitation. This is also true if you are needing to gather information from a large group of people.
We use the interview method for requirements elicitation in our current course project. The interview method is an ideal method to use at the beginning of a project. We set a clear goal of what we wanted to accomplish. We wanted to gather rich data from stakeholders that would be useful at the beginning stages of our project. We had some limitations due to time constraints and the remote nature of our course. We decided to focus on a structured interview format and developed some well thought out questions that applied to all stakeholders. We decided to ask questions about the ideal target audience, ideal coding experience of users, motivation for using the game, and some other technical details tied to the game. We then identified some stakeholders we could present these questions to. The resulting information provided us with some valuable data that is beneficial for our project. We found that the coder game should target those individuals that enjoy video games or puzzles and are either beginners or experienced at programming. We also learned that the game should include one or all of the following programming languages: JavaScript, Java, C#, C++, and HTML, CSS. Lastly, the preferred operating system for the game is on Windows. This information could be very useful in deciding the direction to start with planning and creating the coder game project.